these snobby executives proposition tells you exist provide a mutual relationship between artist and enjoyer. Furthermore, wouldn't the hateful, indecisive public be the metric of an artist's success solely, actually diminish art even further? For those reasons, please oppose. First of all, clarification. For one, we think that these awards and recognitions won't just be limited to the big massive awards international scale like the Oscars and the Grammys, right? They're also more general ones like the RIA certifying a certain album platinum or gold, or like a non-international award more on a smaller national or even like state level, still being able to recognize who you are. We think this is something that proposition fails, and this is why their arguments are so off clause. Second of all, we think that proposition gave us the counter proposal of how these metrics of recognition in art should be the people and not art awards, and as thus we claim that artists that make art for the sake of meaning and the sake of like just art in and of itself will still exist on our side of the house too. Third, we think that we should not generalize one metric as the sole definer of success and say that artists who make art for the fans also exist on our side of the house. This is going to be what this looks like in status quo, like 21 Pilots making songs for their fans, making a fan base for their actual fans, but they received the Grammy in the process. Right? We think this is why both definers of success can coexist at the same time. Moving on, opposition stance in this motion is simple. Justify the ideas of awards and recognitions in art, not as the sole metric of success, but as a primary one. Two arguments. One, why practically it's fine for them to exist, and two, why our side acknowledges those who are never acknowledged. Moving on, rebuttals. Proposition had two arguments. One, why awards fail in practice, and second, why it diminishes art. We'll deal with the first argument inside of our own arguments, and we'll deal with the second one now. First of all, we claim to you that pure artists still exist on both sides of the house, right? So pure artists, those who make art just for the meaning of art, the pure meaning of art still exists on both sides of the house, right? But even if this doesn't happen, this is very assumptive for the proposition to come out and jump to the conclusion that awards are the sole factor of recognition. They never provide any basis of why this is the case, right? But even if this is true, we think that it is not true because artists won't willingly be slaves to their art just for a simple award, right? This is going to be very, very demeaning and diminishing for them and their purpose as a life, right? We think that artists are still going to be wanting to enjoy the process of making art while still chasing these awards if they must, right? But even if these are going to be slaves to their own art, we think that's completely fine because at the end of the day, the art is still going to be enjoyable because it's going to be variety, because not the same art is going to be in the way the same. It's not going to win the same awards over and over again. We think that's very unlikely to happen, and as such, it's completely fine if the artist wants to become a slave to their own work. That's fine. That's their choice, right? At the end of the day, the art is still going to be enjoyable for society. But even if this is going to be very bad for the meaning of art in existing in society, isn't art diminishing even more inherent in Prop's counter-proposal? I mean, in a society where none of your art will go unhated, using that as the main and only metric of success must be very demeaning and diminishing for artists too, right? In status quo, not a single piece of art is hated, is loved by everyone. It's always going to have at least one hater, and this one hater is always going to get to the ears of the artist who made it. Because of this, they're going to hear it, and they're going to be like, oh, this might actually be bad, right? We think at the end of the day, this is going to be something which is going to be very bad, because if you're using this as the main metric of success, by using this as the only metric of success, then you're going to be like, oh, if people think that I'm so bad, then like, oh, I must be bad, right? At the end of the day, that's very harmful. We actually, on opposition, we provide you a safety net by using the awards and by using the awards and recognitions as safety nets against these haters, so that the artist can still feel a sense of recognition, right? At the end of the day, at least our side has some sort of motivation for the artist to make more art, even if society will hate them at the end of the day, even because we recognize that at the end of the day, like, hate will still exist on our side, but at least our side will provide a safety net for a second factor of motivation for these artists, right? Moving on to my first argument. Well, practically, it's fine for these art awards and recognitions to exist. This directly deals with their claim of how these are flawed in practice. The premise of this argument is that we concede that only certain boards will choose the winners, right? That's completely fine. That's how it is in status quo. But we want to restate that the successfulness of any form of art isn't just its ability to win awards, but also society's perspective of it. Look at how certain Marvel TV shows like Moon Knight and Loki didn't win awards. Look at how Coldplay didn't win awards for all of their songs, despite them being absolutely amazing, but they still are still considered successes, right? Why? Because society loves them, and the artist who made them still enjoys them, right? Even though they don't win awards, they're still going to be like considered successes, right? At the end of the day, these awards acknowledge that they aren't like the parameters of what is success and what isn't, and they also acknowledge that they're not society's opinion. They acknowledge that they are just the opinion of some random board who made these awards, right? So we think it's fine for them to voice their own thoughts as to which is the best actor, because that's just the freedom of speech, right? Whether or not society then accepts this freedom of speech and acknowledges it is another question, and that's another debate. But we're not going to be limiting these people for having their own opinion and claiming it as what they believe is best, right? Artists know that these awards then are just the opinions of executives, and they sign up to win these awards knowing that this is the case, right? But they still hope to win because this is a mutual relationship between the artist wanting to get recognized by these board of executives and the board of executives wanting to capitalize on actually getting attention and claiming that this is the best, right? It's completely justified for them to do that. Now, Proposition makes some interesting claims on how this is flawed, right? First, they're claiming to you how discrimination and white favoritism exist. I mean, of course, this is going to exist. Like, most of the people who exist, most of the artists and like actors who exist in Hollywood are whites, right? And the people who exist to make these decisions are white, right? So like it's completely fine if they do believe that is what is happening. That's just a matter of which of these arts are like more favorite to them as opposed to in like consideration that they are exposed to these arts in Hollywood, right? That's just a ratio burden. And second of all, we think that they claim that how some people are excluded because of personal issues. I mean, that's the artist's fault for doing it in the first place, right? If they have personal issues, they should just this is completely fine for them to carry over to these awards because these aren't the sole metric of success, right? Besides, getting award from a foe, enemy, would be completely meaningless for the artist, right? So what more do you want me to say? I think at the end of the day, this is completely principally justified and practically justified for these awards and recognitions to exist. And moving on to my second argument, how our side acknowledges those who are never acknowledged. Panels, this is extremely exclusive yet important nonetheless. Not all of those who work on arts are famous artists who put their name on the front board, who put their name at the start of the movie. Some are VFX artists, some are producers, some are sound artists, some are visual designers. Some of them also want to be recognized just as much as the artists because they put in so much more work and yet they're paid much less and yet they still want to at least have some sort of recognition, right? Panels, people would never, ever acknowledge them if it weren't for these awards existing in the first place, right? Nobody really cares in society when it comes to like these behind the scenes people because that's not the main focus of the movie. We think at the end of the day it's only these awards and recognitions that give you any sense of recognition towards these people who work behind the scenes because society doesn't even care about them in the first place, right? At the end of the day, what these behind the scenes people fight for is the acknowledgement from these awards. So if Proposition is going to be taking them away, where is their source of recognition for these people? We as opposition seek to protect these rights of people to be recognized for working on a project this hard, which is why we are so proud to oppose. Please oppose.